Welcome to the Live Truly Free podcast, where we provide fatherly guidance to entrepreneurs at any level of their journey. Hi, I'm George Black, and this is AJ. Are you ready for this week's adventure of building great companies and discovering the Live Truly Free lifestyle for entrepreneurs? Awesome, let's get started.
So George, when we were reading for the audiobook, there was one letter that stuck out to me because I related to it a lot, actually.
Only one?
Or this one in particular. There was many.
Oh, okay.
But this one I felt, this stood out more than the others. So it's called Ready, Fire, Aim. And the basic context is Max is getting ready to launch his business. He has this idea, and he's just like ready to go.
Y'all caught that, right? Ready, fire, aim.
Yeah. And the basic Max, he's ready to go, and now he wants to fire. And that's exactly how I felt like I started my business, where I got the idea, we had the company, we had our plan for entering the pitching competition and all of that. And I was like, all right, we get in the pitching competition, and then I got money, and now we can start selling, and we're off to the races.
Right.
And we're almost 12 months later, and I'm still not selling. So,
yeah. So what's that about?
I think it comes exactly to this. If I was writing to Mr. A, he would have told me to ready, aim, fire, instead of ready, fire, aim.
So what we're doing is we're talking about some letters from my book, The Next Level Entrepreneur, and AJ and I have finished recording the audiobook, and we're in the process of editing it, soon to release, and we're very excited about that. You can currently get the book on Amazon in paperback or Kindle, but everyone's been saying, I just want to listen. And so the book is written as a young entrepreneur, Max North, writes an entrepreneurial sage, Mr. A, in New York City. And so there's two voices in the book, and we've got two voices in the audiobook. AJ is Max.
Yep.
And I'm Mr. A. So we're going to talk about Ready, Fire, Aim.
Yes. And it seems like, when I think back at it, like how I started it with that ready, fire, aim approach, it just seems so obvious to me that, like, because it's like known as when you're a kid, like from movies or like folklore or whatever it is, you go ready, aim, fire, like the cannons or whatever. Right. Everyone knows that, but for some reason, I did this. I would follow the ready, fire, aim approach, and Mr. A in the letter says pretty much all entrepreneurs operate with that too. So when ready, aim, fire is so obvious, why do most entrepreneurs gravitate towards ready, fire, aim?
Well, and I'm sure some of y'all are screaming at us right now answers to AJ's question, but you're excited.
Yeah.
And so Mr. A tells Max throughout many of the letters, just a little bit longer. We're going to take a little bit more time. We want to think this through.
Yeah.
And it's about resources. So, like, let's just use your example. If, and by the way, I've seen this with lots of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Okay. This concept didn't just come out of thin air. So what would you, if you had taken more time aiming, let's go at it this way. If you had taken more time aiming, what resources do you think you could have conserved?
A lot of time. That would be the biggest resource. There's a lot of times firing at things that don't work or don't do anything and don't mean anything and don't help us.
Right.
Whereas if I had an aim or a plan, I could have concentrated on where we're spending time rather than parts of this, you lose weeks or days to firing at the wrong thing. That would be the main thing I would say.
Yeah, so that's really good because, do you have enough time?
No. To record an audiobook and a podcast and a business.
would you have enough time if you had aimed?
Yes.
Well, see, I don't think so. I think you would have still not had enough time. but you'd had more time.
Yes, that's what I meant. Like
Yeah.
right now, I don't have enough, so anything seems better. To me seems like
right,
we
right.
have enough.
So the thing is that here's what in the book, the book is Next Level Entrepreneur. In it is the process I created called the Next Level Navigator, and the one of the secrets to that process is it forces you to make choices. Because you're going to make these choices anyhow.
Yeah.
So why not go ahead and make them now than when you're faced with them?
Yeah. So that way, that's a really good point, because if you're making the choice before you're into the arena, as one of your metaphors in the book is, you're not faced with those instant pressures, and you're not going to have like an urgency bias in any way. Like it would have been predetermined, this is what our plan is. Right? And that's a lot of how corporations, like risk management, works, is they try to canvas the area for all the problems and then figure out their solutions beforehand, because they're more likely, without the emotion of urgency and that the pressure of the moment, make the decision removed from that. Is that kind of what the concept you're trying to do is?
Yeah. So there's the famous scene in the movie Gladiator where Maximus is on the floor of the Colosseum in Rome, and he's got the other gladiators, and so what he tells them is, whatever, we don't know what's going to be coming out of these gates, but what we do know is we have a better chance of survival if we stick together.
Yeah.
So he had a plan, he aimed, he didn't have much time, literally very little time, but he took what little time he had and he aimed it, and they survived.
Yeah. And that's better than if they all just, instead of Maximus saying that, they just all went into the arena and the things came at them, and then that just leaves you're just subject to your reaction.
Well, it's to your point, and that is, your point is that because when the gates open and the stuff starts coming out, it's all chaos.
Yeah.
You cannot aim.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Mr. A talks about, and Max does too, and so this kind of runs as a thread through the letter, is when you aim, you're like up on a precipice. You can kind of look down and see the lay of the land a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But when you enter in, as we're saying, the arena, when you enter into the endeavor, like when y'all launched,
yeah,
you're down in the valley.
Yeah.
And you can't see the forest for the trees at that point. So I've been working with an entrepreneur recently, and it ties directly to this, but a little differently. And so what he'd tell me is like, well, there's this fantastic opportunity that these guys have been telling me about. There's a huge demand for this kind of service. And I go, well, do you like that? He goes, well, yeah, I like this about it, and I like this, and it's not this, and it's not this, and it's not that. And I go, does it light you up with excitement? And it was like I had jerked the reins and he just stopped and goes, lights me up. So we're in the aiming. I'm trying to say aim. He's ready to go after this one, or go after this one, or go after this one. Yeah. There's all these opportunities and this and this and this. And he just wants to get going because he's been doing nothing for too long.
Yeah.
It's like, no. You do not. You absolutely do not want to get into an endeavor, a business enterprise that you aren't excited about.
Yeah.
Because when the tough times hit, when the headwinds blow against you, when the economy does that, I don't know if y'all can see that, goes this way, goes down. You can't on the podcast. When you've got to have a love for this thing that keeps you going.
Yeah. And okay, so to provide a little pushback, I understand that like it's best to aim first because it's going to give you the plan. You're more likely to make better decisions that way. It's going to make sure that it's something you love so that once you are in the arena and you face the unexpected, you have somewhat of a plan to pull you through that. and a passion to pull you through that. But don't you think there might be some risks in aiming? Like, so I know with the ready, fire, aim approach, or we'll just call it the fire strategy right now, you're basically going to just shoot a lot and hope you
hit something.
Well,
and there's another point to that, and it's in the book. And I had actually forgotten this point in the book until we were rereading for the audiobook. And it's that you might hit a target, and you might think that's your target, and it's not your target.
You just got lucky.
Yeah. Well, or
something else.
Yeah. So like if we were at the shooting range and I'm shooting all over the place, and I hit your bullseye, I'm like, woohoo! And you're like, George, that's the whole wrong target. But I could have put 6 months into that direction.
Yeah.
Thinking,
Yeah. And so
what's the pushback?
Yeah, so I get like you're missing a lot of shots, and this is more just to play devil's advocate because I do agree with you. But the risk in aiming, could it be like while you're on that precipice and you're taking your time to aim, if you pick the wrong target or you make the wrong aim and then you think you did all this time aiming and then you enter the arena to pursue that aim that turns out to be wrong, isn't that double the amount of time you wasted?
No.
Or lost.
No. And the problem with the arena analogy, I used the quote from Roosevelt at the opening of the book because that describes the mentality of, it's the man in the arena quote. It describes the mentality of the entrepreneur who's risking all in the arena. We're not the guy sitting in the bleachers pointing at these guys and saying all the things they're doing wrong. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. What are you aiming at? Mm-hmm. What's the number one thing you got to aim at? Where are you headed?
And that's reference to the last podcast, that castle in the air, right?
Right. It's all tied together. So in other words, where are you headed? Most entrepreneurs, in fact, the way I developed my whole strategic process started with asking entrepreneurs, business owners, well, okay, great. And I was doing, like outsource CFO work was where I started. And I go, well, where are you headed? And they go, oh, we're going to double sales. And I've told this before. And I go, that's not a direction. And they go, well, yeah, it is. I go, no, it's not. It's a metric. And we did a whole podcast on that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if you know where you're headed, okay, and invariably, let's say you're a startup entrepreneur, because you're a startup entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And you're headed this way, you don't know whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
But you will find out. Mm-hmm. Because first of all, two things are happening. One, you're training your thinking to go, okay, here's my direction, here's where I'm headed. Now you get into the arena of the marketplace, okay? And you start realizing, ooh, and we did a whole episode on pivoting.
Yeah.
But because I have forward momentum toward a direction, it is much easier to shift directions.
Okay, that makes sense. So kind of what you're saying.
Well, let me contrast it. Let me just go on. Whereas if you haven't aimed at all and you don't know where you're headed, then what happens is you don't have anything to pivot off of because you're going nowhere.
Yeah. So
you think doubling sales is the answer.
Yeah. Selling
more units is the direction. And then you're going like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Now what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's like you're in a maze and you hit a dead end. Now you got to walk all the way back the way you came to then find the other place that you can pivot to. So that makes a lot of sense because...
Well, here's where you go. Well, I saw a guy making a lot of money selling fruit salad. You're like, really? I never thought of that. Oh my gosh. Let's get a fruit salad stand going. I mean, you just jump from thing to thing to thing to thing.
Yeah. And so and you refer to it in the book as you say, like, misses can be expensive. Like, you pursue that fruit salad business and you don't have a passion for it. It doesn't make you any money. And it's so difficult to set up. You take 6 months going with that. Now you just wasted 6 months of your time, however many ever dollars you poured into getting the business launched. And then you're like, oh, well, now I actually want to just get into the regular salad business, but now you got to rehaul everything.
Whereas if your direction was, I want to change the way shoulder rehab is done across the United States, you'd never go into fruit salad.
Yeah.
Now, your device may not be the one to take you there, but you don't have to have a device to go change that therapy.
Yeah. The device is just a means to getting towards that.
Yeah, you may find out, okay, we're gonna pivot off the device and we're gonna do videos or something, or we're gonna do. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go, but your direction doesn't really change.
Yeah. So it just gives you that's your North Star, your guiding principle. That
only if that direction is sourced in your passions.
Yeah. Because
if you go like, oh, I could care less. I mean, shoulders, knees, ankles, pick one. You know,
yeah, exactly.
It's like, just a moving body part. I'm good with any of them.
Yeah.
And, but if you go, no, shoulders, and you have this whole thing about why it's shoulders, and it's your passion, then you see the difference? Because it's rooted in your passions.
And that takes us right to the cover of the book. Focus your passion. So one, as an entrepreneur, figure out what you're passionate about. And then based on that, that's where you're mapping your direction. Right. And instead of just firing away, just trying to find everything you possibly can, you have that one direction that you're always going towards. Your North Star, you just got to go that way. And that's going to give you the best chance of success in the long run.
Which is defined as?
Building a great company.
Yeah, so he's reading the subtitle of the book. Do you think I wrote that by accident?
I mean, now that we break it down, it doesn't seem like it.
Okay, so it's almost like I could have written the subtitle like this. Focus your passions, map your directions, and you will build a great company.
Mm-hmm.
This is how great companies are built.
Yeah.
Now, there's one little thing in here that's not there. Because I discovered there's two elements that I do with companies. One is map the direction, but the other part of it is lead with the numbers.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother series of podcasts, and it may be a whole nother book.
Yeah.
For another time.
Yeah, and it's not talked about in this letter.
No. No, we don't even get into numbers in this whole book.
Yeah. So what you're kind of doing, and now that we're talking about this, it's coming more clear to me, because I had a question that I had for you.
Yeah.
Because it seems like this navigator, it's almost like...
It's the navigator.
Yeah, the navigator. The navigator.
The next level navigator. It's not a next level navigator. It is the next level navigator.
Yeah.
The rest of them are all imitations.
Yeah. Do you have a trademark?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's trademark.
So it is the.
It is the. Good. Good.
So it seems like what you're doing, it's actually pretty powerful, because what you're doing is you're taking an entrepreneur who has an idea, who has a passion for entrepreneurship, who wants to get into the arena. You're telling them to take a seat and map your direction first. And it's almost like you're telling them to build this narrative of what their company is, who they are, before they even go into the arena. Because my question here was, in this letter, you say the next level navigator is anchored in story. So when you write that, you're saying, the next level navigator not forces, you're not compelling anyone to do it, but you're making the entrepreneur write the story before they even start making the story reality. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you go to last week's episode, Castles in the Air.
Yeah.
And the Thoreau quote is about advancing toward those dreams, that story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, I got to add something here, because this isn't just limited to startups. Okay, so what if you've got an ongoing company? You're a year into it, you just said?
Yeah.
5 years into it, 10 years into it, 20 years into it? Does this work?
Yeah, it should, because it's like, even at that intersection point, it's like, oh, we were going this way. Like, the story is written to wherever you got to, right, if you're an ongoing company. But you're saying, oh, I don't like that story that we've been telling people forever. And especially for the entrepreneur who's leading it, you're like, that's not my story. That's not the story I want. That's not who I am. This is giving you a chance to pivot, to refocus, to make a new map, and actually map it within your passions, map it within what the entrepreneur wants, to rewrite the story or change the direction of the story.
And when do we do this, Max?
Whenever you just call timeout.
No, sorry, it wasn't a timeout.
It looked like it.
I know. I realize that. So I'll do it more like this. It's when you hit a success barrier.
Yeah.
It's when your company stagnates. It plateaus. You're stuck. Yeah, and so a quick little teaser, putting it together, or have it put together, but we'll be launching a mentor program, online mentor program, so that you can actually, I'll, through video, take you through, in more in depth in the book, the process itself.
So what all of this takes us to, like the story and breaking through the success barriers and me needing to go take time to map things out, and the book talks to this, is there's an immense importance on the entrepreneur, the individual who's leading the company, their well-being, their state of mind, what they're doing is the most important thing happening to that company, right?
Yeah. So a great example of this was a friend of mine's son was looking for a job a few years out of college. Maybe it was his second job. And so this was all related to me through his father, but he went to this website of this rather large company, very large company. And I knew the CEO, and the son perceptively read this, so they all had kind of little funny statements about them in their bios on the website. And in his bio, it was like, what's your goal in life? And his goal in life was to be home in time for dinner. And my friend's son said, I'm never going to work for a company like that. The reason is because if the founder, owner, leader, CEO can't get home for dinner, what are my chances of ever being home for dinner? None.
Yeah.
And he was right, because I knew the inside workings of this company. And I had never stopped and read that bio. So interesting. You can see so much. So I just gave you a great interview technique, right? Yeah. See what you're going to go work for. The guy or gal who's leading that company at the top shapes the culture.
Yeah.
Bar none.
And so when he's shaping that culture where he's making it seem like it's a wish, a hope, a holiday, if you will,
right,
to be able to make it home for dinner in time,
right,
for him, probably is for everybody else too.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not going to get home for dinner.
Yeah.
Well, they might, but they're not going to stay around the company that long because they're going to be shirking their responsibilities.
Yeah. And this brings us to like one of Max's fundamental pieces of who he is, where he says it multiple times, where he says, I want to shape my own vision rather than work as part of someone else's vision.
Right, yeah. So it's actually on the back cover, right up here at the very top. Quote, I would prefer, this is Max, I would prefer to chart my own course rather than work as a part of another person's vision.
And so that's kind of, the way that sentence is read, and after this conversation, you kind of have two options, right? It's like, you can be an entrepreneur, in which point, if you want to be a successful one, you have to focus your passions and then map your direction and kind of create that narrative arc, right?
Right.
You need to build your story, your company's story. And you are the most integral part of making that story happen. Or...
because you may be the only employee for a while.
Yeah, you might be the only employee for a while. But even once you get employees, they're all going to be looking to you, saying, oh, he doesn't get to eat dinner, I don't get to eat dinner.
Right.
Or your other option is you go work for the company and you're just going to be part of making that other person's story happen, right? So that's like your choice of entrepreneurship or working or getting a job is making the story or just being part of the story. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah.
And that's why the entrepreneur is the most important individual, or the leader is that so important to the company's success.
Yeah, when you tell that, so let me give you all an alternative view. So I've got a lot of military friends, and this one friend, he was at the time stationed at the Pentagon and worked for. He was an officer on the staff of a general who was, like several stars.
Mm-hmm.
And what this general's philosophy was, I'm always going to leave the office at 4:00, because he knew his colonels and majors wouldn't leave for another hour. So if he didn't leave till 5, they wouldn't leave till 6. And so he goes, even if he had stuff to do, he could just do it later, or he could take it home with him or something.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thinking. So this CEO, he could have gone home to dinner.
Yeah. Just so his employees knew they can go home.
Exactly. That's leadership. This general, I heard that and I was just like, whoa, that is amazing. Now, not every day that would work, and it's certainly not in wartime. That was a peacetime moment. But the idea that I'm going to take care of my people, and I know how they work and operate so well that they keep working after I leave so that they're ready for the next day, I got to give them some space.
That's a great anecdote. And to kind of sum up this letter that I think it took us a lot of different ways, but a lot of really good ways. Because it brought
This
us
is the way these conversations go.
Yeah. We ended up at leadership when we were first talking about aiming and mapping. And,
Right.
But they're all tied together. It's the thing that makes sense. So you really need, as the entrepreneurial leader, you need to embrace that role. And you need to focus your passions. And from there, you map your direction before you enter the arena and begin to fire. Because you want to be firing towards one target the whole time. Rather than, I'm ready, I'm just going to go do it, and then start shooting everywhere and see what happens.
Brilliantly said. Well, if you enjoyed this podcast, I know you're going to love this one. And until our next podcast, may you live truly